Welcome to the Galbraith Foundry Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, a former teammate of mine, and someone who I watched and experienced going up through the ranks as a young amateur fighter. I was there when he made his debut. I watched him progress into a professional MMA fighter as well, and we've just became really good friends. James Macalister, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Davey. I appreciate it.
No worries. So, let's go back. Do you remember your first training session, or do you remember roughly around about when you first started?
Aye, I think I was 17. I think I'd had a bit of an experience with violence as a kid, where I was normally the person getting leathered, not winning, and became quite invested in learning how to fight and kind of fix that problem in my life. And then my brother and I had decided we were going to come and train MMA. We eventually turned up at the battlefield first session and got humbled real fast. And I was addicted, so I was there every night ever since.
I remember early on you coming in, you had a lot of passion, a lot of fire. Please forgive me for saying this because I was in the same boat as well. An ego, a point to prove. These things fuel you and motivate you. You know, it's one of the reasons why you're there. When we use the word ego, I think it's important that people have a perception is that it's this thing where people will make you kind of like you try to act like the big man and stuff like that. But the ego has got such an important part in terms of like protecting. Sometimes the ego is not saying something, not expressing ourselves. Sometimes the ego is, is walking away from situations. A lot of people don't realise that, the ego plays a very important part in self-protection. For a lot of young guys when they get into sport, I know for me, I had stereotypical egotistic attributes and traits and desires. That changed a lot as things progressed. But like you say, it was when I first went in to a session, it was very humbling as you quickly realise that there's so many other people in there that could dismantle you. And I think it's not just a humbling experience, but an experience of growth as well. And, I remember, can you remember battling the boat?
Aye. Oh.
So we're talking about Cage Warriors, right? And we're talking about like last minute pull-outs, right? So obviously Cage Warriors, just in the main event, pulled out. He had he got his arm cut in the shower. It fell in the shower. It was a nasty, nasty cut. And then Jordan was in a car crash. I know. Jordan Strong.
Show was plagued, man.
And then somebody else in a car crash, but they made it, didn't they?
I think so. I heard that, aye.
And then whose opponent missed weight?
I think Michael Blair's opponent was I say missed weight. I think he was about 8.5 pounds over, aye. I don't think that's out of the category of just missing weight by a little bit, I think.
Aye, so that's like nearly 4 kilo, right?
That's a lot, man.
That's a
different weight class.
Aye, it's a different weight class. And then I know Chris Bungard had a lot of kind of pull-outs and had him matched up and he trained and made weight and stuff like that. So I've never really experienced much like, especially at that level, right?
Yeah.
But going back to battling the boat, right? I remember we were warming you up in the changing room and we're fighting on a boat, and it was like a docked boat.
It was not a marina kind of harbour or something, wasn't it?
It was like heavy dodgy, right? There were some heavy dodgy venues we fought in.
It was a couple of miners clubs and some makeshift cages.
Aye. It was heavy dodgy and you were still really young, and I think you're literally, this is how I remember it, right? Now correct me if I'm wrong, you probably remember better, right? I think you were about to walk out to fight and your opponent pulled it.
Aye.
And then they brought somebody else in, is that right? It was about
20 minutes before showtime. They came in and said, your opponent got the jail the night before. And I was like, brilliant. And they said, look, we've got a replacement. And the way they described him to me was, like, he's 15, he's not been training, he's a bit heavier than you, but, he's got a lot of puppy fat. That's what I was told. And I was like, right, how much heavier? And they said, a couple of stone. And I was like, And do you remember our old esteemed fearless leader was like, 2 stones nothing, you'll do this, guy. So I was like, aye, all right, come have it. So I'll no lie, I had done like 3 nervous peas staring in the mirror, trying to hype myself up. Bearing in mind my experience up to this point in my life with violence was always on the raw end of the stick. It was never really me being a winner or coming out victorious, which was the whole point of stepping out of my comfort zone and learning how to fight. And you've seen the video on YouTube. I walk in, never seen this guy before, and he ducks under the cage door, looked like Ivan Drago's fucking cousin. I was like, puppy fat, no chance.
I remember I was in your corner. I remember seeing that kid, and he wasn't a kid. That was like Arnold Schwarzenegger's like secret love child.
He was a big dude, wasn't he?
UK.
And I was tiny.
I was like, why is that 15-year-old built like a 26-year-old?
He didn't look 15, but he was legit. He was sitting his exams at that point. I remember speaking to him after the fight, and he said, I said, they said you've not been training. I said, bollocks, size him. And he said, no, I've been doing my exams. So he was 15, but just an athletic freak of nature, I think.
He was a freak of nature.
He was
you won that fight, didn't you?
I won technically, but my balls kicked for round 1. Came out in round 2, and I think I caught him in a guillotine, I think, if memory serves me right. But a humbling experience to come out the victor, but my face told a different story at the end of it, and my body felt pretty sore after it, man.
as you do. So I think you're probably roughly about 60 kilo, and I think that boy was maybe about 80 kilo.
I think I was 60 kilo, not cutting, just walking round weight about 60 odd. And I think he was 79, 80 kilo or something like that. At the end of it, they said puppy fat weighs a lot, I suppose.
That was no puppy fat. That was all testosterone.
Cool experience though, like thrown in the deep end, and the next fight was a bit less chaotic, I think.
I remember. I fought. You fought. I fought Michael Sergensen that night. And I swear to God, it was like Doc Cotton's house we'd went into. Like the walls were yellow for nicotine.
That was strange.
And it was like a mad. It was called Cage Digression.
Is that what they call it?
Cage Digression, right? Something like that, right? And I remember saying to my coach at the time, I was like, because I had this other big opportunity in London, right? It was a really big show. It was actually closer correlated to like BAMMA and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember what happened. I think my coach Ricky had this opportunity for me on this show at the time, and you know that's how it works, right? I was communicating with another show, and Ricky knew about it, and then he's like, no, listen, we've got this big show down south, Cage Digression, you want to fight on this show and stuff like that. Actually, I was going through a really rough patch, now that I remember it. That night I hadn't seen my son for like 6 months. Oof. And that was really, really rough. That was probably one of the worst times of my life. I remember, actually, I'll not spend too much time talking about it because I want to make sure this is about you as well, more than it is about me. So I remember going to that venue, right, and I fought Michael Sergensen. I think he TKO'd a couple of guys with leg kicks, and I remember just getting out of the fight. I beat him, right, and he was throwing it through a couple of kicks in the last minute. And I was winning the fight, and I was like, man, he could finish me here.
What, with leg kicks?
Aye. Yeah. And I quickly understood why. So my leg went numb, and I just started kicking him the leg back. Literally as the bell went, I just managed to keep the strength to stay on my feet. And I went down after the bell. I was like, I can't stay on.
It's interesting that how as soon as the bell dings, all the pain floods in.
Aye.
Like the adrenaline just dumps almost instantly, and everything starts getting sore on it.
Absolutely. And you know, after that, there was a lot of difficulties in the build up, even with the bus and all that. There, I remembered like I had all the responsibility of booking the bus, and a lot of guys pulled out, and a few people helped out and stuff like that and contributed. I know like Chris Crow at the time and all that, he helped. And Ricky helped a bit as well, the financial side. Credit to him, you know. And I remember after that, I was just on my way up the road, and I genuinely, everybody's, oh, you won and all that, and I genuinely couldn't care, man. I was just like, I feel right now is grief, man. I would do anything to see my son right now. And it's quite a sad story, do you know what I mean? It was coming up to Christmas and all that as well. and it wasn't through anything that I'd done other than split up with my ex at the time. It was obviously things didn't work out, but that was really tough. And these are the things that people don't see is like in the build up to, as a fighter, as a human being with normal, difficult experiences going on in their life, and people who get into fighting as well get into it for, so often quite complex reasons. But I'm sure you fought that night as well, and I remember we're warming up in it was a cupboard next to like a bit where everybody was smoking. Like, can you remember that venue?
I can. I think I fought a northeast guy and won by arm triangle. He had a big scar down his face.
That's right.
Remember, and he had like the kind of crew cut. Kieran McBride fought.
He fought Liam James.
He fought Liam James that night.
Liam
and
James
cut him open with a spinning elbow.
That's right.
Really bad cut. I think the boy I fought was Liam James's teammate. But I think he was, from after speaking with him after it, I think he was kind of rough council estate lad, came into the gym pretty hardy, could fight in the street, but came in with that ego and whatever. I wasn't exactly an experienced fighter either, but it was that was an interesting one because it was the first time I'd come in to a fight where I felt like I was across the cage from somebody that I'd had maybe a lot of experiences with in my teen years, through school and guys drinking in the park and, just violent situations occurring like that. And he was probably like the first kind of, I suppose, avatar of a council estate kid, a schemer or whatever, a Ned up here we call them. And it was that whole triggering anxiety. In hindsight now, looking back, a lot more mature now than I was then. In hindsight, was probably more scared because I was kind of almost facing across from, I suppose, a childhood bully, if you'd like. But going back to what you say, the venues just used to be wild, weren't they? It was like a pub, somebody nailed together a cage and called it a sporting event. Most of the time they were in rings. If you were getting a cage, you were blessed. Your game plan changed whether there was ropes or not, So it's mad.
Even like predating that, I remember that we were down in Milton, and we were all training at this. It was supposed to be a gym, but there was glass and all that in the flare, genuinely. And we were all just taking in kettlebells, and it was like saturated in dirt. It was manky. Thinking about that now, how much the sport's progressed for the better is
night and day.
Is great. But I think, do you know what? Like thinking about like that experience, like your mind going into the fight, and we spoke about before the podcast. We spoke about the challenges that people can face going into a fight. So we've got the training, right? You've got the pressure, like you need to show up. You've got the boogeyman at the other side, right? You've got your childhood bully. You're stepping into a cage to face that demon, to face that monster, to face that fear that has been implanted or has been installed in you at some point in your life, right? And this is the thing I like about martial arts is it's very risky as well. Like in psychology, like you just obviously would never do that, right? The psychologist would never sit down. I've always have a nice psychology theme to this as well. You never go, right, go and look yourself in a cage and go and fight the demon. Do you know what I mean? That would be called flooding, right? So somebody's got a fear and anxiety, use a flooding method, but the safer bet's gradual desensitization, right? But when people throw themselves into extreme situations, right, like they're quite extreme by nature in a lot of ways, right? They're pushing the boundaries, they're taking risks, they're definitely ticking some boxes, and I ticked a lot of boxes for a few different things I've checked at certain periods in my life, but the other side of that as well is like it's like extreme accountability. It's like you're putting yourself in a situation where it's like I've nowhere to go, I'm locked in a cage. I like what he says about that's my childhood bully there. It's like that's like somebody's worst fear.
Absolutely.
And then behind the scenes, training, weight cutting, like the guys at Cage Warriors, like even getting to the venue, there was 2 car crashes. A guy fell in the shower and cut himself open. I had a huge gash in his arm.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's like all the things that can happen leading in there.
His opponent as well, he's managed to get through it safely. He's got to the stage, the opponent's pulled out before, he's got the biggest fight of his life. The guy's pulled out. Mentally, you're like, man, surely this isn't happening. And, these are real things. It's like, it's a bit of a snake pit getting through the camp.
Aye.
I don't know, like, something, in our team, it wasn't always straightforward. I did have a couple of guys in my peripheral that I maybe didn't trust, and later on, it's
In terms of training partners,
training
and who,
partners.
yeah, of course, you've always got the people that, you know, when you're 2 or 3 weeks out from fighting, you're not, you know, you would avoid sessions with them or something, you know, like. Hissy and I always still joke like Friday nights were basically just a square go for us.
Right.
A lot of history there, but a lot of respect between us. And 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, I'm like, I don't need to get left hooked off Hissy. Do you know what I mean? We've all got a joke now between me and a few of my friends actually. If somebody gets blat out drunk, or you know, if somebody's in a bad way or whatever, if somebody's really rough the next day, it's like, you've been hissied. Just a big left hook. So I get what you're saying. You know, you train with people that are smart, technical, and that they're in complete control of themselves.
I seen Hissy in Saturday actually, the wrestling competition. And
His wee boy was training as well and was fighting, wasn't he? His wee
was
boy
he? I
had his
didn't
first
know that.
match, I think.
No, I didn't know that.
He's moulding him in the environment, and big things to come from his kid, I think.
I didn't know his wee man was competing. I should have spoke to him about that. I remember Hissy was known for knocking people out in training as well. So
he doesn't go light ever.
He's one of the ones. He's got one gear, and that's 100%. You know.
I think when you come from that boxing environment, you know, when you've come up through the ranks and you've been moulded in that playground, I don't think boxers ever spar light. They always go 100%, but they'll put head guards on and 16-ounce gloves. But the difference being, we were always wearing 6-ounce gloves, you know, in MMA sparring, and like you say, it's one gear, and it's for Hissy, his gear is win. You know, he needs to win the round, and we have that in common. So I'm win, he's win, and mate, the battles. We could have sold tickets on Fridays for Friday Madness up at the Grip House. It was amazing. Just the talent in the room and watching folk flow. And mate, some of the sessions, some of the rounds that you'd sit and see, it's unbelievable. It was a pleasure to be a part of it.
Aye, you do get you do end up. Sometimes it just gets heated as well. Sometimes you know, you're sparring. You know, I remember, right, and I remember it really clearly. I don't know if you do. Me and you were sparring one night at Battlefield, and it got very heated quickly. I can't really remember what was surrounding it, but obviously, you know, I think it was in the place just behind the garage.
I know where you were.
Can you remember?
Up the hill.
Can you remember?
I think I remember vaguely. I'd been leathered off you a few times, David. Right?
I'm not saying that.
I remember there was once it was a bit more competitive, I think maybe, and I think I don't remember the exact session, but I remember clocking you once, and I think you just see the Davy eyes change, and you're like, oh no.
No, you didn't clock us.
I didn't even land a shot then. Point proven.
No, he definitely didn't clock us. So I'm
you just bullying me then?
No, actually clocked us. But I think sometimes these situations as well, it's like it can also build a level of respect. You're constantly testing the boundaries in sparring, right? There's a hierarchy there, so there's a hierarchy, and it's established through competence. Right?
I would agree with that. Aye.
I do believe that you can quickly go down the hierarchy. You can go up the hierarchy, but you can quickly go down if you're throwing your weight about. So, and I'm not saying this was me or you, right?
No.
I mean, to the point where I've kicked people at my gym. I've just kicked them out, and I'm just like, that's not okay. Do you know what I mean? I don't like it. It's the intent behind it as well. I think back then at our gym, I think that was a lot more. The culture was a lot more accepted. Is that it was hardcore. We trained hard, and it was the whole train hard, fight easy mentality. Yeah. And even I remember Ricky would do like interclubs in that wee training cage, and it was like
a shoot phone box.
Aye, and it was like basically like, right, cool, you need to fight your way into the fight team.
Aye, it was, wasn't it? It was for you to be aye.
And you've got. Do you remember Captain?
Aye.
He had like pro MMA gloves on. I remember, and I was like, I don't think I did. And he was a lot less experienced than me, in all fairness. And credit to him, Captain's always been quite ballsy. But I remember being in that wee cage room, and I was like, I felt kind of bad for him, but you know, he was gone for us. You know, he was trying to fight his way into the team.
Aye. He had that dog in him, didn't he? But just maybe not the most technically gifted. Aye.
wanted to make an impression. Did you ever feel like a sense of that you had to fight your way into the team at all? Or?
I think so. I think that there's, zooming out slightly, I think that experiencing different cultures and different gyms, as you know, I started at the battlefield, but my pro career, I had one pro fight, and you were in my corner for it, against Dougie Scott, and it was all at the battlefield, and then I transitioned to the grip house, and I got to see and experience different leadership from different coaches, and I take accountability for how I acted as an individual as well, and how I perceived myself as a fighter. And I think I've been referred to as like Marmite. You know, you either loved me or you hated me. Most people don't like Marmite. And it was things like wearing t-shirts and stuff that was encouraged, you know, like dinky down and stuff. And if you beat somebody, it was, you know, humiliate them, dig them a grave. And, you know, it was all a big laugh back at the gym if you'd like, I think if you remember, I fought Dougie Scott, like it was semi-pro back when it was pro gloves but no ground and pound. And it was just silly wee things that were encouraged. Like I took his back and it was like 10 seconds left in round 1 or 2 or whatever it was, and you heard the clappers, and I could hear his corner shouting, "Just turtle." So he's just got his elbows and knees tucked in, and I can't really do much. I can't ground and pound him to the head. 10 seconds left, and it was like you could just hear the other leadership, I'll say, from our side, like encouraging certain behaviours, and I'm sitting scalping his arse and stuff and riding him like a bull and stuff, and it's disrespectful. It's, some people would say it's funny. Where am I going with this? You transition into a different environment, and that immediately was coached out of me. It was, don't behave like that. That's not how we behave here, you know. And it was, I changed as a fighter, but probably changed as a human being as well. Spending more and more time around people at the grip house and people like Dean Riley and people that took me under their wing there. Didn't just make me a better fighter, but probably made me a better human being, and just see the world a little bit differently. And we talk about ego, you know, just removing that chip on your shoulder and always trying to be in the limelight for the right or wrong reasons. Just let your hands do the talking, do what you do in the cage, train hard, and aye.
And you did a successful, well, I would definitely consider your career as a professional successful, but I think anybody who's, or most people who's professional, I would consider that as a success, because there's so many challenges that I've seen thousands probably, if I'm being realistic, of people aim for that and then fail, and especially, you know, it's a minefield. It's a minefield. I was speaking to Gary Priestley about this as well. The fact he's got to Cage Warriors and where he has and he's recently retired is a remarkable achievement. And you know, you were up there. You're fighting on the bigger shows. You fought in BAMMA.
Yeah.
You On Top was a really big show at one point as well.
Yeah, I kind of probably the majority of my pro career was on Top. I was managed by Tam Collins and by the On Top promotions team. Fought in BAMMA, then on Cage Warriors, and that was the last. Yeah, and my last one was against Brett Johns down in Cardiff. I didn't know it was my last. You know, it wasn't like I took the gloves off like Gary did on Saturday and lay them down in the cage. My career was cut a bit short, and it wasn't through injury and stuff. It was, we talk about things that happen outside the cage and stuff. And I had a daughter, and my circumstances changed, and she needed me to take care of her and to step up into being a dad. So I had full care of her, and bath and bedtime is at training time. So I had to take a big step back out of the martial arts world and reshape my life.
It's a really selfless act, and I think like being a parent really changes you. And it's one thing I always respected about you, like, is, and one thing it's always, I felt like it stood out to me, and why we've had a good relationship, why we've been friends, we've been at other sides of the fence, so to speak, but we've continued to have a very mutual respect and of each other. And I remember, because I'd retired for similar reasons, you know, my son was in a vulnerable situation, like the business was starting, I was in a vulnerable situation, and I had to make a selfless decision to protect him and look after him and care for him. and I know you've done the same thing, so I could really empathise and truly understand, although your situation's unique, is truly understand that, you know, that's you sidelining your dreams, your hopes, your dreams, your ambition, everything you've worked so hard for. You've cried, you've bled, you know, you've sweated, you know, you've shed tears, and you're just going bigger picture. And I would love to see more parents make decisions like that. So, and it's very admirable, and I couldn't really respect a decision much more than that, I don't think.
Yeah. I think that when you, in hindsight, because at the time everything's happening all so fast, and you're conflicted, aren't you? It's like a game of tug of war a little bit, your dreams versus your, I suppose, moral obligation, really, because when you think about being a parent, you are the world to somebody else. I suppose what I did was replace my purpose from MMA and from chasing those dreams to being a dad. Can I ask you, how, when you retired, obviously you've had the benefit of staying in the gym and staying, you know, training a lot and still being in this environment and then coaching the future generation of fighters. I completely almost severed ties to it in my career, very much commercially in sales, medical sales. So I wasn't in the gyms as much, so it was literally like a severed umbilical cord, if you would like. See, when you stopped fighting and you stopped that intensity and the sparring and not just hitting people but being hit, how did you cope with the internal kind of triggers or aggression?
Not very well. I kind of, to be honest with you, I felt like I started suppressing it through like alcohol or things like even, you know, avoiding certain things. So I'd probably say I started making very unhealthy behaviours, swapping it. But ultimately, when it came to that, like, MMA was a big distraction for those things and a channel.
Aye.
So what I was doing
coping
is,
mechanism almost. Yeah.
So it's like the ultimate escapism. Like
I
somebody
used to love walking through the doors and you could have the shittest day in the world. You could go in at the gym, down, sad, raging, angry, whatever it was. 9 times out of 10, sometimes you have a shit session. Sometimes you're getting caught off everybody that normally you'd smoke. And we'll put that down to a bad day. But 9 times out of 10, you'd walk into the gym, you could have a terrible day and you'd leave. Totally changes your day.
Aye.
You know, I'd sleep well at night and stuff. And do you know what changed for me? Road rage.
Right.
I don't know why. That was my space where I became
After you retired?
Aye, massively. It took me, I'd honestly say a couple of years, maybe a year and a half, 2 years of being able to recognise it and then understand it a bit better in hindsight, a bit more mature and a bit more in touch with psychology myself now and stuff like that. But somebody would just maybe not indicate and bully in, and that was me. I was furious. I was almost ready to get out the car and for something like that, which is so silly to think about it like that. But to go from not even just hitting people or being hit, but to deplete yourself of energy every day physically, to go from that to just nothing, like maybe lifting weights, in which is a totally different workout. But to just have that shift, I get really triggered in the car. That was my space. Never out in a club, never pubbing or anything. I was never aggressive like that. People don't believe I used to fight professionally. Always smiley, always a happy guy. But behind the wheel of a car, that was my trigger, I suppose. That was me becoming really aggressive, and I struggled to harness that for a long time after I stopped competing and training.
How did you deal with that?
Honestly, just, I suppose, the ego piece and self-development and understanding that, honestly, I'm being oversharing now. Sometimes my kid would be in the car and somebody would cut me off, and the language I would use and the tone I would have with just a complete stranger who's driving, you know, a BMW 3 Series is cut into me, and I'm sitting shouting profanities at this guy in front of my kids. And then I thought, how are they looking at me? They're not understanding in their head that dad's triggered because, you know, he doesn't train anymore or whatever. So I suppose, again, going back to purpose was, are you being a good father? Are you setting a good example? And that's kind of always been my North Star. That's helped me kind of get back on the straight and narrow if I've ever kind of veered off or started behaving in ways that maybe I'm not proud of or that maybe they shouldn't see. That's always kind of got me back into gear.
And how did being a parent change you?
Oh, massively. I mean, I think it changes anybody. As soon as you have a kid, everyone who's had a kid, those who have had kids recently, that change, that shift, that feeling that you think nobody else understands how I feel. There's millions of people that know how you feel. I think for me, being a fighter, being an MMA fighter professionally and trying to make that your life, and that is, you've got your blinkers on, don't you? And you truly believe, I'm going to make it. I'm so focused and dedicated. So it's a selfish sport. And I've always said this, the people around me in my inner circle, if they detached from me, girlfriends or whatever, I'd understand. I would never have resented them for it, because it's a selfish sport. Training comes first, diets come first. People don't see that you miss birthdays, you know, Christmas dinners. Sometimes you're eating a salad if you're fighting New Year time or whatever. You know, people want to go out and celebrate the horse races, you know, the events, and you're sitting with water and miserable, just want to go home and eat your next meal. So it's a selfish sport, but to go from that to being a father and only a father, which is a selfless act, it's a complete shift, isn't it? It's one extreme to the other, and I am looking at it, it was a journey. It took a lot of time and adaptability, and honestly, probably a white belt mentality at being a parent, and just understanding that I'm new to this. You know, how do I get better at it? And I was the guy at toddler clubs that was surrounded by all the single mums and stuff like that. You know, I was a single dad. I didn't have, you know, our mum wasn't around at the time. So it was like, how do you get better at martial arts? You absorb and you connect with people who are really good at martial arts. For me, it was, how do I be a good dad? How do I learn how to do hair? How do I learn how to, you know, paint nails and stuff and dress them? I just started going to toddler clubs and learning from the mums, those who are best at it, I suppose.
Being a parent takes a good parent takes a lot of skill, and we can all mess up, we can all make mistakes. You know, I've made mistakes. I'm sure you have. I'm sure, you know, many other have. Did you take anything like from your like past mistakes, past experiences, that before being a parent or whilst even being a fighter, was there anything you learned that you maybe knew definitely not to do as a parent?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, like, we've all got our experiences of growing up, and, you know, some kids, you know, mums and dads are still married and stuff, one household, you know, never disruption, lived in the same house their whole life, you know, things like that. Quite like yourself, divided homes, different places, lots of moves and stuff. So, you know, my parents weren't perfect. I don't think any are. But what I do is I try and focus on what they were really good at. You know, like what didn't I enjoy and how it made me feel, and then what I would like to avoid for my kids, if that makes sense. So, again, I'm far from perfect. I'm humble enough to say, you know, I've made mistakes and I'm sure I'll make more, but I'll own it. I'll be accountable for it. And my kids, our house is very much, you know, it's an open household. Our kids can talk to us about anything, and that's what I'm proud of. You know, when I was younger, it was like, can I say this? Or if I say that, is that going to upset that one, you know, because it's against this one or whatever. It was a divided community, if you would like. Our household is, you know, it's one unit, and it's come talk to us about whatever you like, drugs, sex, rock and roll, whatever it is. Come speak to us, and nothing's really off limits. And we give open and free advice to the kids, so really proud of it.
It's a really healthy environment that you've cultivated, and that comes with a lot of trust as well, as you know, and you've got a trusting environment where you can speak freely, you can speak openly, as something that, you know, we all like to strive towards. You know, as a family unit, you know, it's important that you are all on the same page, because you get out into the big bad world and people take a pop at you. You need to make sure internally that, you know, that's a safe space. You need to make sure the family is all collaborating, comes through communication. And obviously that's a big thing you do now with work. You work in sales, you've been very successful in that. You've done it for a while now. Just tell us a wee bit more about what you do and how you do it.
I mean, I was always very futuristic. So even though my goals, my ambitions, and my dreams were MMA, and I fully believed in myself, I still had to pay the bills. And like going back to not having that one household unit, I lived on my own for 17. So while everyone else was just getting to immerse themselves in training and go home and their mums cooked their dinner, I had my own flat, and I had to cook and clean and pay bills and stuff. So sales was keep the lights on, and the only reason I got into it really was there's such a high turnover in sales. If you're not good at it, you either bounce or you're chucked out. So there's always a revolving door in the sales community. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're in sales, there's always seats moving. So seeing an opportunity, I was like 17 and started working. I had no salary. It was just commission only. So it was, if you don't sell, you don't eat. So a baptism of fire there. And I just progressed just naturally through that into like Yellow Pages. That was a massive kind of foundational learning arena for me. I think everyone who's in sales at some point's maybe touched with Yellow Pages. And they've got a great training environment. They give you good solid foundations. And then this was a really interesting transition because I was always in telephone sales. Obviously, I had a face for a phone. I was always black eyes and dodgy looking ears and a fresh broken nose and stuff. You're turning up at an office trying to sell something. People buy from people. And initially, first impressions are huge. I was turning up looking like I'd been in a scrap at the nightclubs on the weekend. It's a challenging environment. Immediately, you've set yourself a hurdle. So I stuck to the phones. And then when things changed in my life and I had to step away from MMA for a bit, I was presented an opportunity to do field sales, which came with all its other benefits, company car, things like that. So really leaned into it. And then I was given an opportunity by somebody that's been very monumental to me in my career, in my life, gave me an opportunity to move into medical sales. I was 23, I was a baby, and I looked young as well for 23, and she took a real punt on me. She pushed for me to get the job. She seen something in me, and she knew that she could build on me. Took me in, and 3 years later, really successful time in that company, and then I joined one of the big giants in the medtech industry called Stryker. Was there for about 7 years, and they have their own incentives and things like that. You hit consistently, and you're listen, they want their pound of flesh from you. You need to work hard, but they reward success. And quite like martial arts, it's got a constant understanding of development. It's evaluating how good you are now, where your gaps are, and how we can get you better, which correlated perfectly from my previous experience, which MMA is, if you don't fix the problem, you're getting punched in the face a lot more, you're getting leathered. So it's a real practical learning environment, isn't it? Mm. If you can't get back up against the cage, you're eating shots. I think Robert Whiteford used to say this to me all the time. If you've been taken down, you need to understand that getting back to your feet requires you're getting punched in the face a few times. And this is the mindset of Robert Whiteford. He used to say, you deserve it because you got took down. So you're eating a few shots on the way up. So that's your punishment. So going from a real practical learning environment like that, where your face is on the line, going into medical sales, it was same mindset, different environment, shared success. It was cool. So I'd been with a different company for a couple of years, and I'm actually doing full circle now. I'm going back to Stryker over in Australia. So my family and I fly out there in a few days, and I've got a couple of months off just to embrace the new environment, and then back to it with Stryker again. So exciting times.
That's great. It sounds like a fresh start, like a new chapter in your life, and at this time you've got the skills behind you. You've got you've managed to establish your life. You've got the wisdom. You've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'm excited for you with that. Something I like to do in this podcast is I like to learn, but also like to test people's skills. So I was wondering if you'd be interested in doing like a wee bit of a role play situation where I'm a client and you're maybe trying to sell me something.
I don't see why not. Go for it.
So we could try it. I don't know how it's going to work out. So maybe need to. It doesn't even need to be sales. It could be you are using the methods and techniques that you've learned through sales, and I'm a client. Let's say, I don't know. It could be Pick something you want to sell me.
Honestly, I suppose it's the same approach to absolutely anything, mate. What I would say is, sales. A lot of people think that they've got the product and they understand the product inside out, and they go into that appointment with their agenda, which is always sell you this product, right? And customers see it a mile off, especially in medical sales. Like, but in any industry, most clients will see that a mile off. You're here to sell me something, right? The unique approach would be, instead of trying to be transactional and just try to get them to take this product and you take their money, that's just a transactional relationship. It's to truly understand their whole service. You know, it's to understand what their goals are and what their needs are, really. Align your product portfolio to their goals and what their service looks like. So if I understand absolutely everything about what they're trying to achieve, the steps in their service that they're trying to run, and I can find some gaps in there that I think that could be improved, you know, understanding what their problems are is massive, because you can then provide a solution. That's how I've always approached my business, is don't be transactional. Don't throw features and benefits about your products to anybody. Understand their service, understand their problems. If you can identify things that you can give them that makes things much easier for them or solves problems, jackpot. Keep in contact with them throughout that journey, and it's not transactional, it's a partnership, you know. And as I've said here, I've jumped from company to company a few times. So I'm wearing a different jersey, I'm representing a different brand, if you would like, but I'm my own brand. So when my customers see me, they see James, who's now representing this company, or who now has this portfolio that he's promoting, but they always know it's me that's promoting it. So they'll trust my advice, they'll trust proposals I'm putting in front of them, because they know that I'm not trying to be transactional. They know I'm not trying to hoodwink them. You know, you get that cliche car salesman cliche. He's a con man. He's just trying to get me to take this. He'll say whatever he needs to get me to buy it. Avoid that like the plague. Like, be a partner. Genuinely care about the outcome. And in my situation, in the med tech industry, there's a patient on the table. So there's an actual human life there. So for me, that's important. Like, making sure that the full service, the surgeons, everybody have what they need to have the best outcome for that patient. That's key.
There's that aspect as well where, there's like, when you're going into medical world, it's very much bound by ethical and moral practice.
Yeah.
And I think you're dealing with surgeons, you're dealing with very intelligent people.
Yeah.
So if you're coming at it with that approach, like, they're going to see right through you straight away. Mm-hmm. And they'll call you on it as well, or they'll just be like, I'm not dealing with this guy. So, like, I'd imagine the level of skill, morality, integrity, and efficacy is also super important in that exchange as well. Much like counselling, or much like if I work with a young person, for example, what you're explaining there actually felt like a lot. If I'm working with a young person and I'm working with somebody who comes to me in a very vulnerable situation, is that it's this is where I see a lot of like bad maybe coaching, or like maybe like poor quality, like somebody just try to drive sales. Like, I'm going to get this person to get 10 sessions with me.
And you're manipulating them.
Aye. And I'm going to go like, I'll fix all your problems, blah, blah, blah. It's unethical and immoral, and there's a lot of boundaries around, like, when ethical and moral boundaries around when in the counselling world, like, where you could get struck off.
Yeah.
Like the medical world.
Yeah.
And I hold myself accountable to those standards as well. But a lot of what you're talking about is like what we work with is, or what I'd work with anybody, is that having a collaboration. So there's compliance and collaboration, which are two different things, right? So I noticed a lot of people that work with a child is what they feel they want is compliance, but what they should be striving for is a collaboration.
Yeah, collaboratively, but I suppose the compliance side of things is the guidelines for you, is to make sure you don't step out and cross lines. But the overall goal is collaboration, and I suppose it does cross over, and this is in any industry or any role that you're doing. It's all based on trust. I think at that point, in my situation, sometimes people will come to me and just point blank, vulnerably ask, "What can I spend this money on?" And if I just throw something on the table because it suits me, they're going to find out. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but see, at some point, if I've not sold them the right stuff, too much of the wrong stuff or whatever, they're going to find out. And see, when they do find out, it's a silent output. They don't trust you anymore, and it takes years to build that trust, or a long time to build that trust, and seconds for it to disappear. So for me, I think for a brief transaction that might pay me a bonus or something, is it worth it? Is it worth losing that trust? Is it worth losing that partnership? No. And at the end of the day, I think that everyone inside themselves has their own moral compass. For me, I'll sleep better at night doing the right thing rather than taking advantage of somebody that I could say some things in a really convincing way to manipulate them to spending money on the wrong stuff, and then go to bed thinking, haha, I've got bonus, but you've made a bad call over there. I don't sleep as well.
Well, why don't we try this, right? Would you like it if we done something like, just so I can see it in action, you're trying to sell me a New Life gym membership, right? And I'll be deliberately a wee bit awkward.
Aye, absolutely. Right,
okay.
So you're the parent of a student coming in, potentially signing up your kid? Or...
Aye, let's do it that way.
Right, okay, so I need to convince you that your kid is best placed at New Life Gym.
I've got all the experience in what frictions can happen there. And,
aye, you've probably had objection after objection from parents or even students, price and time investment and stuff like that. Right, okay.
Right.
So I suppose give me the background of it. This parent's messaged you. Are you on the phone to them? Have they came in to see you at the gym and see the facility? You've walked them round. Where are we?
Let's say we're at the start. We walked up to reception, right?
Right.
You're at reception, and I'll just go right into the role, right? So this is off the cuff, like obviously you don't know the ins and outs of my business, right? So I'll ask difficult questions, but a lot of them will be legit as well. Any difficult questions, legit, right? So I've got my wee boy's 5. He's getting a lot of bother at school. He's low in confidence. He's becoming quite isolated in terms of struggling with social stuff. He's getting bullied, but he's also difficult in class. He's been showing signs of aggression, and he's a really lovely wee guy, but he's really got a short temper. I've tried him at other clubs, and he's struggling with it. At this point here, let's say I'm being difficult for the sake of it. I'm going to start bad mouthing other clubs or whatever. Just I've had a bad experience at other clubs. No bad mouthing, that's no fair. That's somebody's experience. I'm going to say that I've had a bad experience at other clubs. I feel like I'm not happy about it.
Okay.
And I think that things could have been dealt with better.
Okay.
And I'm not bothered about price and stuff like that.
Okay.
One thing I do want to know is, like, is it safeguarded? Do you have the relevant qualifications? Or do you have ability to, do you have enhanced disclosures and stuff like that? Like, I want to know these things, like, before I put my child into somebody else's care. Can I watch? Can I come and see them? What's it like? How can I come in and just see what it's like? What am I going to expect when I bring my child who's got all these challenges? What am I going to expect?
No, you're right to have all these questions and concerns, by the way. And before we get into it, tell me a little bit more about your son. You mentioned that he's a really good boy, but he does show traits of aggression and stuff like that. And is it only at school this is happening, or is this at home?
Sometimes at home, but he's a lot more loving at home.
Right.
Like he's very empathetic. He's dead cuddly and stuff like that. But just sometimes he gets really angry, like he really wants to punch something.
Okay.
He's on the waiting list for CAMS in a moment, which could take about 2 years.
Okay.
Again, I'm really annoyed about that. I feel alone. I feel like nobody's doing anything to help me. I'm frustrated with the school as well. So it can do it, but I think in school they don't understand like they don't see that side to him that I do when he's at home and he's loving and he's cuddling. Like I think he's getting triggered in class and he needs extra support. So sometimes he's lashing out and he's defending himself and hitting other kids, and then he's getting the blame for it when they're picking on him and attacking him. So I want him to be able to defend himself as well. That's a big thing for me, is that he can protect. I don't want him going like hurting people.
Not proactively, but be able to reactively defend himself.
I want him to be able to protect himself, but also have the confidence to say no to people as well.
Yeah. Well, look, I just want to say thanks for sharing that. Like, I know that you're not alone when you say you feel alone. There's so many parents that come through the doors, and so many kids come through our doors here who share the same traits, who are experiencing the same things, and who feel the same way. So you're not alone when you come through these doors. But before I sit and try and tell you why New Life Gym is the best place for your son to be, first I want to understand, what do you want from this?
I just want my son to be happy. I want him to, be safe, be able to protect himself. I want him to have the confidence to speak up for himself in a way that he's not lashing out. He does need a bit of discipline and structure. Like he does need that. But I want consistency in his life, and I don't want him to be kind of fobbed off. Or I get that everywhere's going to work for every child, but I want him to have friends. I want him to be happy in school. I want him to be able to go to clubs like other kids, and I want people to be able to see him for the child that I know and love.
Yeah.
Just what his face value behaviours are.
Like your son's going through a transitional period just now. He's joining school. That's massive. Sitting him down for 6 hours a day and saying, "Be quiet and listen." That's a huge difference. Nursery's like a stepping stone, but they just get to play a lot of the time. Getting into school's totally different. And personally, when I was at school, 6 hours a day, I was the same thing. Disruptive, class clown, always kind of trying to be the attention in the room, if that makes sense. Everything but the work that's been put in front of me. This is boring, right? Basically. It's boring. He's bored, and he's probably getting so frustrated that this is the trigger, the reaction of it. Like here at New Life, it's not just about coming in, hitting pads, tiring them out and sending them home. It's not like that here. It's a framework. So the framework that we have gives them discipline, motivation and understanding of why they feel that way and how to channel it. So while he's feeling frustrated in school, he knows he's coming to the gym at night, he can take it out here. But we're going to teach him how to process all that. We're going to teach him how to deal with the emotions he's feeling and give him a framework that can help him recognise when he's getting upset and annoyed, and steps to try and calm himself down to stop him lashing out. So I appreciate what you're saying. Like, you want to make sure he can defend himself in the future. I don't hear he's been attacked yet. So an immediate problem isn't self-defence, it's self-regulation. And that's what we focus on here at New Life with our kids. We're all completely vet checked. We've all got DBS forms. Like every coach here, every adult that walks through the doors here that teaches, we're all vetted. So your child's safe in here. What I would say is that this needs to be a mutual agreement. We would love to have your son come on board. You need to make sure he's coming at least 2 to 3 times a week to see the benefits from this. And it's not magic. It's going to take a little bit of time. Why don't you come in for a taster session? Why don't you come in and watch? Just sit and watch at the sides, see how he copes with it, then drop him off the next time and maybe not watch. And let's just bed it in slowly. Why don't we try it for a week? And if you like the environment, I'm sure you will, we'll sign you up.
Nice. I should have employed you, James. I think we'd have been a lot busier. I really liked, you paraphrased a lot. You showed me that you're listening. You're repeating back to me some of the problems that I'd faced. You showed me that actually some of the stuff I was experiencing was quite normal for a lot of people out there. There's other people experiencing that, so not to feel alone. You offered solutions for some of the gaps and the problems, all the stuff that you'd spoke about previously. And then you're realistic in the sense where you went, ultimately if you're going to want to get something else, you're going to need to put in the work and maybe do like 2 to 3 sessions a week, which is relevant in this world, in the martial arts world, and anything really. So before we finish up, I just wanted to ask, is there anything that you wanted to share before we close up? Obviously you're going away. Is there any insight for James Macalister that you feel that would be important to anybody listening.
I think catering to the audience, maybe like you've got quite a big network in the martial arts world, as do I, through fighting and then refereeing and stuff as well. And I think anybody who's a fighter who is going through a transition for whatever reason, that they're now stepping away from competition, it's rough mentally and it can take its toll on you. What I would say is fear of the unknown is there, imposter syndrome is there. See, if you take your mindset that you have walking into the gym, that white belt mentality about improving your grappling and your wrestling's not as good, your cage work isn't as good, your striking's not great, you know, maybe your boxing's fantastic, but mixing it up's not good. See, if you take that same mindset of development into any industry, into any job, along with the discipline and the motivation that it takes for a fighter to step into the cage and go through that fight camp, mix all of those skills up, they're completely transferable into any other job that you do. As long as you go in with a white belt mentality, soak up knowledge from those who are best in that industry and apply it under pressure. Discipline, mate, you'll succeed in absolutely anything. And I hope that's not cheesy when I'm trying to share that life wisdom, but I've done it, and I've changed from fighting into sales and into medtech sales, and it's exactly the same approach as it was with fighting. I'm just not fighting with my fists anymore. I'm fighting with my mind, and I'm constantly challenging myself in other ways. So I suppose closing comments, if you're stepping away from competition and you're going through a mental struggle, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, mate, just zone in on another industry and take the same approach there.
James Macalister, thanks for coming on the show.
Cheers, Davey. I appreciate you, mate.